Hello, Mr. Moderator and fellow town meeting members. I am Tom Jacob, current chair of the Finance Committee. I hope you and your families are well and coping as best as one can in these remarkable times. As Finance Committee Chair, I have the responsibility of presenting fiscal year 2021 operating budget for your approval. In this presentation, I will discuss much more than the operating budget. I will go into some detail about reprojected revenues and expense deductions outside the operating budget. One advantage of this method of presenting to town meeting is that you can pause the video and review documents as I speak if you wish. And to that end, I will at times reference page numbers in the warrant and the Finance Committee operating budget addendum included with your mailing from the town, which is also posted on the town website under this warrant article and which I will display during this presentation. I would like to begin by letting you know that the town began reducing spending in March as soon as it became clear that nothing about the future was clear. As a precaution, all town expenses were placed in a frost. This is not quite a freeze where no new spending occurs, but instead means that monies could be spent only after a new level of authorization by the town manager and finance director, or in the case of the schools, the superintendent. This frost, in part, is responsible for a projected $1.2 million excess in the school department this year, which will be used to help pay for additional summer school for students identified as needing additional support as a result of remote learning issues, and for the additional school operating costs related to the coronavirus in the fall. The schools are currently preparing to open again in the fall, even though no decision on that has yet been made. It is, however, prudent for them to plan for a fall opening now. You may have read or heard that some other towns have furloughed some of their employees. Needham has not needed to do that. However, some paid functions are now not happening, such as sadly spring sports, and therefore stipends for coaches have not been spent. Likewise, no substitute teachers have been used, and therefore substantial savings has occurred in the current fiscal year. In addition, some workers have been redeployed to other functions, such as school van drivers who have been delivering meals to certain elderly residents. It is clear to the Finance Committee from these actions that our town management is very serious about controlling spending and ensuring the financial health of Needham. As they always do, town management, under the leadership of Kate Fitzpatrick, Dave Davison, Ed Kudenkantz, and Ann Gulati, are making difficult decisions at an unbelievable time in our history to ensure that the town is healthy financially while still maintaining a high level of services to our residents. Please now turn to page 15 in the warrant. Please note the revision date on the page, on pages 15 and 16 is May 8th, while my letter in the warrant is dated March 15th, 2020. All the information in the letter is based on information known as of the March date, which of course predates the coronavirus pandemic. The information dated May 8th was the initial pass at reducing the budget, and then finally we have the May 26th status referenced in the Finance Committee budget addendum. For this presentation, I will only reference Finance Committee budget addendum in the March 15th and 16th columns. In March, we conservatively estimated town revenues to be $203.5 million. In the past 2 months, the town has removed almost $5 million from our planned general fund spending for a new total of $198.6 million. Town Finance Director and Assistant Town Manager Dave Davison reforecast revenue the town might expect. The Finance Committee carefully reviewed these updated forecasts and supports them. Here is some detail on how the new revenue projection was derived. Looking at page 1 of the addendum, in the top section, you can see that $2,447,000 was cut from local estimated receipts. $1,140,000 of that is from reduced auto excise, meals, and hotel room receipts. That includes a $400,000 or 7.5% reduction in auto excise tax and a $740,000 or an almost 44% reduction in meal and room taxes. Also, under local receipts, there are $700,000 in cuts from March in projected receipts from departmental activities. which include major reductions in fees from building permits, park and recreation activities, library fines, parking revenue, and more. It also includes some items which will not decline or will decline only slightly from the March projection. These lines include fees from solar array at the RTS and solid waste fees, for example. The only other significant reduction in this section is in investment income, which is reduced by 85% or $575,000. This is due to sharply declining interest rates and a desire to be very conservative here. The next section, personal taxes and state aid. It is notable that real and personal property taxes are not estimated to decline. Let me repeat that. They are not estimated to decline. The simple answer here is that the assessed values and the tax rate will not change, and therefore the taxable amount will stay the same. There's an expectation that a portion of personal property taxes, which are predominantly paid by commercial entities on the value of their furniture and equipment, might never be collected. And therefore, the overlay surplus in the section below has been lowered. However, the real estate taxes owed to the town have not changed and will be collected at some point. The vast majority of real estate taxes are escrowed through mortgage lenders and paid directly to the town from these lenders. We do realize that unemployment is up and that mortgage payments and by extension real estate taxes may not be paid on time. And while some accommodation is being made by some lenders, this will not impact tax payments to the town. And therefore the Finance Committee is extremely comfortable with this projection, which accounts for more than 80% of all annual revenues. The revenue from state aid is less certain. This section is dominated by Chapter 70 school aid. In March, we used the governor's preliminary budget for school aid of $11.5 million. The amount of Chapter 70 aid in fiscal 21 is estimated to decline from the March projection by only about $250,000, which represents a portion of the new monies we expected for full-day kindergarten. The rationale for not reducing more has to do with the formula the state uses to determine state school aid. The decline by the state in this line item must hit all school districts equally on a percentage basis. Some school departments rely on the funding for up to 80% of school cost, and even a small cut could devastate those districts. Therefore, the belief is that this would be one of the very last items impacted in the state's budget. In addition, Needham's Chapter 70 aid is close to the minimum required amount under the law, and it is highly unlikely the state legislatures would want to decrease the minimum aid to municipalities at this difficult time. But even if there were, say, a 20% reduction or about $2.2 million in revenues here, we have almost twice that amount in our stabilization fund to counterbalance the decline in revenues. Also in state aid, the next largest item is unrestricted state aid, where a 20% or $380,000 reduction is estimated. The balance of the estimated decline in state aid comes from zeroing out projected library aid and other smaller revenue items. Next, we look at other use of other available funds. First is free cash, which are unspent monies from the current year, which are available for use in the following year once they are certified by the Commonwealth. In fiscal 21, we are projecting $7.9 million of free cash, which is more than 10% lower than what we projected in March, more than 20% lower than budgeted for fiscal 20. As mentioned earlier, it is expected that use of the overlay surplus funds, which are the funds left for use to offset uncollected taxes, has been lowered by $500,000. And finally, under adjustments to general fund revenue, reimbursement from our enterprise funds and CPA funds are expected to remain the same as projected in March. As I mentioned earlier, it is important to realize that real and personal property taxes account for more than 80% of our annual revenue, and this has historically been extremely resilient and predictable under all economic environments. Where there is uncertainty, such as local receipt and state aid, appropriate and conservative assumptions have been made. For this reason, it is prudent for the Finance Committee to not require any significant cuts to the town departmental budgets, which are in the operating budget at this time, which will give the town the flexibility to make adjustments as needed during the fiscal year. I hope this has been useful to help you better understand where we see the revenue situation in fiscal 21. We believe that this $4.9 million reduction, while small in terms of percent at 2.2%, is still conservative, especially against the backdrop of what we believed to be a conservative projection in March. We concur with Mr. Davison that the most significant exposure is in the Chapter 70 school aid funds, and we believe that this to still be minimal, and as I mentioned earlier, can be offset by stabilization fund if necessary. So, with this reprojected revenue, the town looked to cut expenses in a manner that was prudent. To this end, it was deemed unnecessary to reduce the operating budget at this time. This makes sense to the Finance Committee for two main reasons. The first is the town will have an opportunity in 3 months at fall town meeting to reduce the budget if necessary. This will come after two major issues will be clearer. First and foremost, we are expecting the state budget to be finalized and delivered by September 1. And second, we will have 3 more months of experience to understand what is occurring economically. At this point, even though to most of us it feels like months and months, the pandemic has only been going on in earnest for a little under 90 days. In that time, many things have changed dramatically, not the least of which is holding town meeting outdoors in a parking lot. It is reasonable to believe that many things can and will change in the next 3 months, giving us more time to make prudent decisions about cuts if necessary. And the previously mentioned frost will continue through the summer and early fall, thereby keeping our spending down. The second, and we believe the more important reason, is that the operating budget was prepared, vetted, discussed, and reworked by dozens of town employees, several resident boards and committees over the period of 6 months, beginning in October of last year and culminating in the final budget in March of this year. The budget was well considered and thoughtfully designed to provide the necessary services to the town and is a balanced budget that is viable and sustainable under the revised revenue plan. And therefore, the Finance Committee, Select Board, and Town Management are all recommending the operating budget stay as previously designed. In a typical year, most of this presentation will be spent on discussing highlights of the operating budget and what is driving any changes. However, this year I will be brief in that regard. The operating budget is increasing over the fiscal year 20 budget by approximately $12 million, or 6.7%. One of the biggest drivers is 24 new FTEs approved in the budget. 14 of those are in the school department, of which 10 are for special education teachers and support. The other big driver is contractual and non-contractual wage and salary increases. This is a normal year-to-year occurrence. I do call upon you to read my letter on pages 1 through 11 in the warrant. If you have specific questions not addressed in my presentation, please email them to the email address provided for the purpose of asking questions on any presentation. I will be forwarded those questions and submit an answer to the town's website. I will now move to the non-operating budget portion of the general fund expenses. All the cuts in the budget are identified on page 2 of the budget addendum. Under general fund cash capital, about $2.7 million has been cut. Some of this is from cash capital and will be discussed in Article 21. The major change is the withdrawal of Article 22, Public Works Infrastructure. As you can see in the next section, four warrant articles, number 7, 8, 11, and 12, have been withdrawn since May 8th, when the final warrant was drafted, and 5 others never made it to the final draft. These are indicated by an asterisk. All told, this accounts for approximately $1.7 million in additional savings. The last area of savings is non-appropriated expenses. which includes local, county, and state assessments, and the overlay, which is the reserve for tax abatements and exemptions, as well as uncollectible taxes. The total savings here is about $500,000. A reasonable question may be, why not make even more cuts now and use the fall town meeting to add back items should the outlook improve? We believe the wisest course of action is the one we have put forth, and this is to propose a major reduction of more than 36% in non-operating general fund expenditures. These items are much less time sensitive than the operating budget. As you know, the operating budget supports the daily activities of services provided to residents. The town is nearly fully open, and we expect that to continue through the summer and fall and into next year. And this budget provides funding for that to occur. And what about towns that have had to furlough employees and cut services? I cannot speak to those specific situations, but can reassure you that Needham is in a very strong position financially, and in some ways has been preparing for such an economic downturn for years. We have literally put millions of dollars into stabilization funds and have always budgeted revenues conservatively. This has resulted in us being able to better weather this storm. In conclusion, the Finance Committee is satisfied with the adjustments made over the last 90 days or so, and to both the revenues and expenses, and believes this to be a conservative and achievable budget. I also want to reiterate the most important element is that our town management. We have the utmost confidence in their ability not only to stay within budget, but to make changes should some more unforeseen events impact us negatively. I want to offer my thanks on behalf of the Finance Committee to our town management for their thoughtful and tireless work to bring about the reduced and balanced budget. And finally, to all town meeting members, thank you for your continued commitment and dedication to governing our town. For all these reasons above, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends adoption of Article 14. Thank you.